CAR T-cell therapy has become available within Europe now through for the patients up to the age of 25, and is currently also being now commercially available at a few selected centers in Central Europe. So it's been offered to patients in that context, and I think it will also be established as a very valuable option for patients with relapsed refractory ALL in the age group until about 18, 19, 20. The clinical value for patients beyond that age group, anyone beyond 25, is just an investigation. And the first clinical trial that was published by J. Parker in New England Journal, to me, was actually quite disappointing, because the long-term survival rate for these patients was actually quite low. And also the toxicity of this drug is quite horrendous, because patients go into ICU, about a third of them. There are treatment-related deaths with CAR T-cell therapy through cytokine release syndrome, neurotoxicity. So, and there was very interesting, although very small data by Jade's paper, but they took some responders to get a transplant, so sequence CAR plus transplant, and compared them to the patients that just got CARs. It was even. Small numbers, all with all the caveats, and was not in that clinical trial. So that was actually quite an eye-opener. Yet, that was the first trial that was published with a kind of second-generation CARs. You learn something from that. You learn how to manage it. There might be smarter ways of managing the toxicity, maybe better patient selection in that situation. So those things are just happening at the moment, also here, that we have clinical trials in that context. So I think we can improve with CARs and have better results. But in the long term, I do see the CARs being only used for patients in relapsed refractory ALL. I don't see that CARs will ever be able to be used for frontline therapy. Whereas blinatumomab, as well as inotuzumab, both are drugs as off-the-shelf products. Also from the toxicity profile that they have, will be included in frontline therapy. So it's a moving field. So what we're talking now is very hypothetical. If CARs will be available as the third line of therapy for relapsed refractory, what is the role of that? No, it actually isn't there yet. In 5 years' time, we will have the answers, the frontline therapies for INO and blina. I'm very sure that those will be integrated in frontline therapy. So, it's a moving field. I think allotransplantation has its merits. There's a substantial body of it that it can cure patients. Blinatumomab has some evidence that it can, a single agent, potentially also deliver cure, only in a relapsed refractory situation, as well as also in the MRD situation. But I can see blinatumomab eventually reducing the rate of allotransplants in ALL by using it further in the frontline therapy, being more effective in certain subgroups of patients. Whereas CARs and transplantation, that sequence, I'm very uncertain if that will be the future. It's economically also a question, because both therapies are quite expensive. And it's to be seen if the health authorities, the agencies, will actually approve a drug or the sequence of those two therapies with the trial data that we can present in this situation. It's an open question. I'm not quite certain where the journey will take us here. And also there was the hope that CAR-Ts can replace transplant. But looking at the first data that we've been seeing, it's not quite clear if that's going to happen. So we are just talking about the simple concepts that we have currently for CAR T cells, the second generation CAR T cells. There is a whole wave of innovation coming along that road where the T cells are becoming engineered to be switched on and off, to be able to be removed by safety switches, by dual CAR-Ts targeting not just CD19 or CD22, but having both in there, or other antigens in there. So what I said before was based on the current trial data in phase 2 with the simple version CAR-Ts, which is already complicated enough, but the field is moving on in the next generation of CAR-Ts technology. So it would be very interesting to see how that looks like, and it may change the way we think about that. So it's intellectually and hopefully as a patient, a very interesting topic. And not to forget, we also are talking about everyone CAR-Ts being sort of not off-the-shelf product, but there also are initiatives of using off-the-shelf CAR-Ts with third-party T cells, so universal CAR-Ts, and that's something that as the first trials have gone on the way, and it has to be seen how that will have an impact in the field.